architectures, and for you to analyze your architecture, again, you look at whether that architecture is giving me the desired quality, it's giving me the requirements, it's giving me the, you get an input from your stakeholders, and of course you go back and forth to improve it. And once you're happy, your architectural design is ready. Any question on this? This is more like a roadmap, and this is more like what you call a structure of the basic things you do in your what you call architectural design aspect. Everybody's on board with me on this?
Actually, no, because
yeah,
what's the use of it? I think it's so much. I don't know, but when
go ahead, so yes, go ahead.
I think we did it like in short steps, not this way.
Okay. So basically, I understand from your comment is that we know from our previous courses that we do architecture in a maybe 2 steps or 3 steps, right? Not like this detail, correct?
Yes,
okay.
As I remember.
Yes, fair enough, absolutely, and I'm not surprised. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Jawad.
Even though it's just depends on the infection requirement.
The process, yes, the process depends on the requirements, absolutely. But yes, so I agree with you. That probably, in our 205 days, probably we looked at it maybe, in a couple of steps. But now, of course, we'll be focusing on this part. We'll be focusing on this part. Okay. And we will be focusing on, what are my options? What are different styles? I'm pretty sure when I teach 205 and, other instructors who teach 205, they do talk about some basic styles. But now, inshallah, we will be talking about in detail some of these styles and what kind of constraints they put and what kind of quality attributes they give you. Now, another course which I usually teach as an elective, which is 416, which is software architecture. So in that software architecture elective course, I actually even go more and I cover more styles, and I really talk about this documentation part, and I also talk about more formally into the evaluation parts. So in 316 probably we'll be breezing through this, right? But we'll be focusing a lot on these parts. Hopefully 416 used to be offered every year, but for last 1 year we're not getting a chance to offer it. But maybe if someone is interested, maybe we will offer it 416, and we go really into deep on architectures there. Now, once you have architecture, of course you go on to detailed design, right? And your detailed design again consists of number of steps or activities. Now, what I'm going to do now here is I'm going to go through it first one by one, and then we'll take questions and talk about, you're not clear about certain step or not, right? Of course, again, remember this set of slides is just a roadmap, so that, as we move along in the next 10 to 12 weeks, you can always come back to this set of slides and understand, okay, so he's now talking about architecture. Now he's talking about styles and patterns, and this is why he's talking about style and patterns. And then, for the detailed design, he's talking about design patterns. That's where the design patterns are, okay? So in a detailed design, of course, you're going to use your architectures, the one you just created. So architectural designs, you're going to use this as an input. That's going to be your starting point. And then you do something called interface design. And then you do something called component designs. And of course, there you use design patterns. And then, of course, you have your data structure designs, your algorithm designs, your user interface designs, and eventually you finalize your system designs. And at the end, you go on and take this design for software construction, where basically you go on and specify very last details of your design and software code, source code writing. So this is typically a journey we take for an application, but of course it's not like a waterfall. Of course, you keep on evaluating your designs, trying to see how good they are, and of course you go back and keep on improving them as well. So it's not like a waterfall, but basically, it's like a cycle. You keep going back and forth to improve it till you finalize your design ready for construction. Of course, you use a number of tools as well for drawing, for analyzing, for collecting data, for evaluation, and of course you use a lot of documentations for actually specifying your detailed design. The project, inshallah, will focus on not every part of it, but will focus on quite a few of these parts, inshallah, which hopefully will be starting from next week. Now, if I go to the next level, of course, when you have architecture and you're going to come up and trying to design your interface designs, you're going to still use design principles. And these design principles, inshallah, I'm going to talk about them today, very basic ones. And of course, for your interface designs, you also look at the communication happening between components. So it's not user interface, it's the component in communication happening between components of your system, your architectural subsystems. Sometimes we also use DFDs, data flow diagrams. I'm sure you guys have learned data flow diagrams in your 215, right? Did you guys learn data flow diagrams in 215?
Can you give us an example of it?
The data flow diagrams? Okay, I'll give an example. But let me just complete this, and then we'll answer all these questions one by one, right? So basically, you will be using design principles. You will be using these. You'll be focusing on how different components, packages are interacting with each other. You will be at the component level. You're going to focus on classes. This is something you guys do anyway. Class diagrams, their attributes, polymorphism, inheritance, design principle, design patterns as well, right? So we'll be using design patterns to make our system designs, good designs. Of course, data structures, you focus on data structures, your persistent databases, all of this stuff from your, two and database courses. So in this course, we'll not be focusing too much on this. Algorithm designs, of course, are important, activity diagrams, pseudocodes, this all, and of course, you have so many different algorithms, and some algorithms have better functional performance or over the others, and some are more complex, and all of those stuff. So they are all considered, and they are integral part of your detailed design. Of course, this part again will not be focusing in our course on this part again. Of course, you have user interface designs. Of course, you use matrices to calculate your data, and coupling matrices and cohesion matrices, and so on and so forth. I'll show you some, inshallah, in this semester. And of course, you do refactoring to go back and forth and improve your designs, right? And then, of course, you have user interfaces. Again, this is not our focus in this semester. I'm pretty sure you know this from your 312 days. And eventually, your design is finalized, your databases are selected, your controls are done, your connections are finalized, and you go on and construct your system. So I just went through this. I kind of breezed through these steps, but let's go back from the beginning, and I'm gonna open the floor for questions. Yes. Is this part clear? What do we mean by interface design? Now, interface design is actually, is something like this. You in your architecture, you will have designed your system into different components, okay? And of course, these components talk to each other. They share data. They communicate, right? And this interface is all about, this part, how they are communicating, how they are sharing your data. Data flow diagrams, basically, is something like a process where you basically go on and you have storage, and you go store data, and then you have another process, and then you go on to another process. It shows you how the data is flowing between in the application. Did you guys do something like this? No, yes, maybe.
Yes.
Yes, okay, perfect, perfect. Any question on this part? I want you to focus on this one with me.
Yes, do you have a question, please?
Go ahead, please. Please go ahead.
In the first phase, interface design, but in the very last phase is user interface design. Is there any difference between them?
Correct. Good question. Absolutely good question. Now, let me start from here. User interface design is something you learn in 312. Right? This is focused on the GUI. Now, this interface design is focusing on the communication happening between different components, subsystems, or packages. Okay. And this is the good news here is that since we're going to be developing our architectures, all of these, especially if you're going to use some existing architecture styles, they already tell you how the different components going to connect. So they have connectors. So in some cases, you don't really have to focus on this. This is just there by default. But sometimes you have to focus on what kind of protocol is going to be used for communication between different subsystems, right? Or maybe sometimes you might have to come up with your own protocol. This is all part of your interface design.
All right.
Right? Like services. Sometimes you're using services, right? So you're using certain web services. So in those cases, this interface design is actually, how these services share data, how they communicate. Of course, this is something you guys know. Classes, we will be focusing on this again, but this is in the first 3 weeks, we were actually focusing on this. We were focusing on, classes and how you can, come up with behaviors first and, use inheritance and use polymorphism and use abstraction and encapsulation concepts. Now, of course, there is something called design patterns. We will cover them as well. Do you know what design patterns are? Anybody knows design patterns?
Like event-driven.
Event-driven, okay, yes, yes. Any other idea? I have the similar comment in the first section as well. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, like MVC or MVVM.
Yes, MVC, MVPN, right? So yeah, as part of the thing, I'm gonna talk about design patterns, and I'm also gonna be comparing with. Sorry, I forgot the name of this one. So I'm gonna also be comparing about these architectural patterns as well. Okay. So we have something called architecture patterns, and we have something called design patterns. Okay. So we'll be focusing on them, and we'll be focusing on also, how they are different. So this is something we'll be focusing definitely. Again, this is just a roadmap slide. Okay, so it's just letting you know that these are the things which are coming. Of course, data structures. You guys know this in your 202 database course. So we're not really be focusing too much on it, but this is an important part in your design as well. They play a critical role because if you realize what's happening here is that from very high level, you're actually going to a lot of detail and eventually a lot of stuff. Actually, you basically go all the way to the source code level. Okay. Of course, algorithms and so on and so forth. Different kind of matrices, refactoring to improve it, and so on and so forth. All good, guys? Well, of course, construction, inshallah, at the end of the semester, towards the end, I'm going to give you maybe a whole 3 to 4 lectures on construction. We'll be talking about preconditions, post conditions, and how you construct your applications specific before you actually go on write the source code. So to complete the discussion, again, I don't expect you to memorize any of this stuff. This is just basically for your information. Formally, design has so many different aspects. Like, for example, there are certain fundamental design concepts, and we actually talked about this in the first 3 weeks. This is the reason I was talking about them. So you have some fundamental design principles. There are certain other design issues like you have to worry about data persistence, you have to worry about error handling, security, All of this stuff, of course, needs to be considered during your design. And then you design your systems at an architectural level. This is something we'll be starting and doing it next week. Different styles. Then you have detailed design patterns. This is more to do with the code and so on and so forth. Of course, user interface design. This is something you know from your 312 days. Quality attributes. Yes, we'll talk about some of these matrices. You use static views and dynamic views. You use class diagrams. You use behavioral diagrams like sequence and state transition diagrams. And of course, your systems could be object orientation systems. So we focus a lot on this, but inshallah in this semester, I'm planning to talk about maybe, some examples where you can have some functional structured design as well. Okay. And eventually you use so many different tools to help you do your design of your application. Is the roadmap clear? Again, this is just a roadmap, and there is no concept here. Actually, just show you what kind of stuff we're going to be learning now in the next half of the semester. All good, guys? Any question on this? Perfect. Yes, Ali, you have a question?
No, just to show that.
Oh, thank you very much. Jazakumullah khair. Jazakumullah khair, Ali. Thank you. Okay. So I think now we can move on to the second half of the lecture, which is, the thing I want you guys to know. So let me stop sharing this one. I'm assuming you guys can see my screen, right?
Right,
Yes.
you can see it.
Yes, I can.
Perfect, perfect. Alhamdulillah. Now, before I talk about, the architecture and details of the architecture and this architecture slide I showed you, the patterns and styles and constraints, and then eventually before I show you, good design principles and design patterns and, refactoring techniques and all of that stuff, we need to know one important thing in addition to those four concepts: abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. We need to understand that when we design our applications, we design our applications to achieve, flexible designs. This is something as a designer you're always striving for. You're looking for flexibility in your design. You want your designs to have reusability properties in them, and you want your designs to be efficient. So this is something you always try to achieve as a designer. So, there are different aspects of flexibility, and we'll talk about this now that you know what we really mean by flexibility and some examples to help us understand. Reusability is also important, and we'll dig into it a bit to understand that, what is the meaning of having a reusability property in your design. And of course, efficiency is also important. But of course, you can see from your experience and even looking at their names, it will be very hard, for example, or there will be cases where you want a better efficiency, hence you might have to compromise on your usability or flexibility, for example. So for sure, there will be some trade-off between these principles, right? So we'll talk about this, and this will give us a better understanding of what's really, as a designer, I'm trying to strive. Now, the very first thing we are very much interested and we want to strive for is flexibility. Now, what I mean by flexibility, what comes to your mind when say I want you as designers to come up with an applications which have flexible design? What comes to your mind?
That they can update it. Like if I want more features, it's easy to add it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if I have new features, I should not be kind of redoing all my design, right? This should not break my design completely. Anything else? Anybody else would like to comment on this?
Also,
Yes,
it's easy to make it work in other platform.
yes, that's an interesting observation. Yeah. Easy to adapt in a sense, Anybody else would like to comment? Basically, both of you guys actually kind of summarize it spot on. Flexibility is all about having a flexible design means you want a design that can easily accommodate change. Now, what kind of changes you are anticipating in a system? When I say it should be able to accommodate change, this means is this only one kind of change which can happen, or is there you believe there can be multiple types of changes which can happen in a system?
I think multiple changes.
Yeah, so in other words, changes could be there for multiple reasons. Can someone comment on it and give me an example?
For example, change of requirements.
Change of requirements, absolutely. So maybe you have now new functionality.
Yes.
Right.
Or you may have to change some hardware.
Yes. Right, and hence you need to change, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. So one possibility or anticipated change is that you have a new functionality. But is this the only possibility? There can be some other possibilities why you might have changes, and hence your design needs to be flexible to accommodate those changes. Is it possible that sometimes we might have to change the existing functionality? We're not adding new one, but we're trying to change an existing one.
Yes, it's
Yes.
possible.
Exactly. So, and so there are many possibilities why we may have changes, and we want our design in such a way that, it's able to accommodate those changes. So we are as a designer, or when we're designing applications, we try to anticipate these possible changes. So sometimes you may have to add more of the same kind of a functionality, right? So sometimes, like for example, you're doing a banking application, and you at the moment have, as per your requirements, a current account and a saving account. But based on your experience, you may realize that tomorrow bank may add a investment account, for example, or any other fourth kind of an account. So I need to design in such a way that yes, today I have only two types of accounts, but tomorrow they may add another type of an account. So I should be designing my applications such a way that I'm able to add same kind of new functionalities. Now, of course, this comes with experience, right? But of course, this is something, a rule, as a principle, as a good design principle, you always try to do. Of course, this is one possibility of change. Another possibility of change is sometimes you have to add different functionalities. Like for example, originally you had a deposit functionality in your system. Now, they want you to have a withdrawal function as well, right? So it's a change. It's a change. Nature of the change is different from this one, but it's a change. And you need to maybe, design an application where you anticipate such changes. Or there could be another possibility that the functionality of an existing one has completely changed. Like for example, the withdraw is already there, but now they say, okay, as a gold customer, we're going to allow you that if you have 100 reals in your account, we'll allow you to withdraw 110 reals, right? So the functionality was already there, but tomorrow they may ask you to change it, right? So they are the in a very high level, three possibilities where you're gonna have anticipate changes in your applications, and as a result, you want to design your application in such a way that that's able to accommodate those changes. Now, let me give you a simple case here. Let's see what's happening here. I'm a designer, and I'm a very inexperienced designer, and I came to you and say, okay, this is my design number one, and it's fulfilling my requirements. It says that a user should be able to register, or a member should be able to register to a website. So I said, okay, this is my design. It's fulfilling this requirement. Now, you are more experienced than myself, and you immediately asked me this question. You asked me, how do we make the design flexible enough to register new categories of the member? Because you said, well, yes, at the moment I have only one category of the member in the system, but you never know. I anticipate that tomorrow they may have different kind of members. So how you can go on and change this design in such a way that it's actually flexible to accommodate these kind of changes? Take a moment and try to do it, and then maybe one of us can volunteer to share a whiteboard, and we can discuss the solution. So take a moment to see how we can do it. Is the question clear?
Yes, it's clear.
Perfect. Take a moment, kindly try to see how you can change this existing design, the one I came up with, to help you answer or accommodate these changes, potential changes.
So, Doctor, in the future, there could be different types of members. Is this the question?
Absolutely. So tomorrow we may have, an admin and a super user and so on and so forth.
We can use inheritance, I think.
Spot on. We can use inheritance, and we can have, for example, instead of member, we can have, different kind of members, right?
Yes.
Anybody else would like to come up with a different solution for the problem?
Doctor?
Yes, please.
We can make the member has an attribute that will identify which type of member is he.
Okay, yeah. So basically you're saying another possibility is that I have a member class here, right? And I have an attribute here, type, and it will tell me, what type it is, right?
Yes, that's
fair enough. Now, see, this is what I want us to understand. Is that as a designer, we want to, and I'm very happy that this is happening actually, because as a designer, we want to see that we should have this habit. Now, when you will become experienced, probably you will do it in your head, and probably you'll just process it like this for simple cases. But I want you to be able to think that as a designer, I should have multiple options to solve the same problem. Then of course, then I should be able to go and analyze and say, which is the best one to solve the problem here, right? Is this point clear to everyone? I want you to have this ability. Okay. So you can, as a design, solve the same problem multiple times, multiple solutions, but of course one will be better than other, right? More flexible, right? Because at the end of the day, in this case, we're interested in flexibility. So as you guys pointed out, absolutely, we can add, an inheritance here, right? And I, for example, can decide to make this as an abstract class. This is my design decision, right? I make this as an abstract class, and then I have create concrete classes. Why I'm making an abstract class? What benefit I will get if I make this as an abstract class?
There is no such a member class, or يعني the one who will program this project, he should not create a member, because there is in the world there is no such a member. There is Y member or X member or standard member. So for
absolutely, absolutely spot on, right? So if this is the case, right? If this is the case, that according to my system, I believe there will be no such thing as a member. There will be different kind of members, and you know, I would never have a member object. Then of course, as a designer, you know the basic tools with you, so you basically go on and just go on and create this as an abstract class, right? Everybody got this point? Any questions on this, guys? Seems to be okay, right? Some show of hands. Yeah, some show of hands will give me a confidence here, guys. Thank you very much. Now, how this is more important. The question I have is how this is flexible design now.
If I have a change on Y member, I don't have to in other places.
True, absolutely. So if I have changes here, I don't have to worry about this part of the application, isn't it?
Yes.
And so on and so forth.
For example, if I want to add a new member, like a Z member, I can add it simply.
Exactly. So I can add a Z member here. I don't have to worry about this part. I don't have to make any changes there as such, right? Or maybe what even if I have to make a changes, you know, it will be, you know, targeted, and so on and so forth. So this is an important part of your design, that you should try your best to design your applications which are flexible so that you anticipate change in it. And the good news here is, to be honest, is that, you know, the use of inheritance, abstract class concept, interface concept, and with the help of the knowledge of some design patterns, you will be doing, you know, most of the time good flexible designs. Okay. Let's take another example. Adding a functionality on application. So this is one kind of change which can happen, right? So you're adding a functionality on application. So for example, you're designing an application that accommodates adding new kind of functionality because you want your system to be flexible. So the ability to change functionality is often accomplished in the same way. What I might mean by this is, you know, let me go through it one time and then I'll come back and try to explain this step by step. So basically what you're doing is you're accommodating new changes depending on the context and scope. Let's see what's happening here. Right, I think this should be like this. Let's say if you already have a base class and you want to add a new functionality. Now let me go back, explain this probably because I think probably you guys are lost there, right? Everybody's clear about this till this point, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Now, sometimes when you're adding new functionality, you may come across situations where there is a design already which has some basic element in it, and you know you need to change it accordingly. Now, for example, when you're designing an application that is able to add new kind of functionalities. This is, your aim as a designer, that tomorrow you will be able to add new kind of functionalities. The ability to change the functionality is often accomplished in the same way. So you may have a scenario where, the changes are new changes can be done, and this can be done in the same way as we did the previous case. Like you can use the inheritance concept or the abstract classes concept to actually go on and help you add new functionalities. So accommodating new functionality depends on its context and scope. So how you accommodate these new functionalities and make your system more flexible. At the end of the day, it depends on what kind of design you have in front of you. So for example, if I have a case here where I already have a base class, right? So can be handled by adding. So what one case is, we can handle the flexibility or adding of the new functionality by adding the new method to the existing set of methods of the class. Like for example, I have a print itinerary function which is already there in the base class, right? And then I may have a standard trip, and now this one is the same functionality, but it's done in a different way. So all I have to do is basically add this print itinerary into the child class. Which principle I'm using here?
Polymorphism, Doctor.
Exactly, polymorphism. So basically, we're adding new functionality to a system. So sometimes you'll be able to, if you have like a base class and an inheritance structure in your application, then you can easily accommodate new change, where basically just go on and use the the polymorphism concept, right? And that's exactly what you do most of the time, right? So this is one possibility of coming up with a flexible design. Now, sometimes you may have to, add new classes, right? So basically, you may have, like this is like a, a booking, application. So you may have a trip, which could be like an air trip, which is your standard trip, for example. Otherwise, you can go by a bus, or you can take a ship, for example, right? So for example, in the beginning, they only have these two. Later on, they can add new type of, functionalities. Tomorrow, they can even add one more. They can all have their own different behaviors, and you can just basically keep doing it and adding into it. Is this point clear to everyone? What is the meaning of flexibility? What exactly we're looking for? If I have to summarize, I will say, if you're looking for flexibility, as I said a few minutes ago, if you're using the concept of inheritance, and you can use the concept of polymorphism, you can use the concept of interfaces and abstract classes to really have good flexible design, because it will help you add new functionalities. Sometimes you will be able to add functionalities by adding a new child class. Sometimes you can use the polymorphism to change behaviors, and so on and so forth. Is this clear, guys?
Yes.
Good, alhamdulillah. Now, the other aspect of having a good design is reusability, right? What's the reusability? What is the meaning of reusability, and why, as a designer, you are interested to have designs which are, which are good from a reusability perspective?
Avoid wasting time to rebuild software design again and again.
Exactly. You don't want to redesign all the time, or you want to, reuse the code and so on and so forth, right? So basically, when we are designing software applications and we are developing some components, and we want to develop new applications, we, are interested in reusing these ideas, these designs, these codes to, of course, reduce the costs and make them fast development and so on and so forth. So you can do reusability at an architecture level, and you can do the reusability or aim for reusability at a design level. And of course, you also can aim for reusability at a implementation level as well. And you try to reuse your functions. You can try to reuse your classes. You try to reuse your packages, so on and so forth. So reusability is important. Now, probably we'll stop it here with one example. Now, do you know what software product line is?
No.
No, that's fine. Now, see, for example, let's say this is something which is very popular in the industry, especially for large organizations, where they develop multiple applications of the same type. Like, for example, Apple. Apple have an operating system on iOS for mobiles. They have an operating system for iPads, and then they have an operating system for, Macs, right? Now, just an example. FaceTime now is a functionality which is available in all of these three devices, correct?
Yes.
Do you believe they write it every time? Or are they reusing?
They reusing.
They are reusing. They are using the source code. They are reusing the design, and they have come up with an architecture in such a way that this reuse is easy. Right? So as a designer, you are very much interested in coming up with designs which can be suitable to help you achieve your reusability targets. I think I'll stop it here because I need to just make one or two announcements here, and then inshallah we'll use this as a starting point for next Sunday, inshallah ta'ala, right? So let me stop the recording, take the attendance, and then